Sneak peek. The 2026 Major League Rugby season has kicked off. Week one is in the books, and fantasy managers got a taste of some of the players that may play a big role this upcoming season. On this week's episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show, I'm joined by a special co-host. John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning helps me break down the past weekend's match between the California Legion and Anthem Rugby Carolina. James Deeley of the North American Rugby Database also comes on the show to give some interesting nuggets that fantasy managers might want to hear, plus much more. The Fantasy Rucker Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 185 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much for Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in MLR. It might not be Matt Yee. It might not be Devin Vanderpool, but it's a better looking guy overall. It's John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning. John, joining us here to be special co-host. Maddie not able to make it here to help me out here on this opening week of Fantasy MLR, which we are so excited for. But hey, couldn't think of a better guy to help me, I guess, open up this Fantasy MLR season, as we do have week one in the books, or at least with Fantasy MLR, considering it week zero, week one happening this week now with the start of Fantasy MLR. John, it's been a little minute, but glad to have you back on.
You know, I gotta say, Ryan, thank you for having me on. Thank you for having me
Of
back. I've
course.
noticed a pattern here. Each time I come back on the show,
Yeah,
Maddie's always like, can't make it for some
it is true.
reason.
It
And
is
I'm like,
true.
Maddie's he running scared? And I get it. And I get it because I'm the only fantasy owner that's made the championship the last 3 seasons in a row. Granted, I
It's
lost to Maddie
true.
3 years ago. Then I beat Stephen Lowen 2 years ago. And then I lost the
hmm
three-headed collusion monster that was Yuli's brother and Vandy. Can I make a return trip for the fourth time, kind of like the Free Jacks, but win it again? I
Yeah.
guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we will find out. But either way, filling in for some co-hosting duties here on
That's
this
fun.
episode 185, which is a jam-packed episode, John, because we obviously have a match to break down here. The
Yeah.
opening match of the 2026 MLR season between California Legion and Anthem Rugby Carolina, which of course gave fantasy managers either some confirmation bias or maybe a little bit of
Mhm.
angst in terms of maybe some of the guys that they drafted, which of course we'll get into, and we'll talk about some of the guys that people need to look out for heading into this week, maybe some last minute pickups, and then of course break down our first full slate of games this upcoming week. We actually also have James Deeley of the North American Rugby Database hopping
Nice.
on to give fantasy managers a little nugget or two that they might
Mhm.
need to want to know that might help them this fantasy season. And of course, Vandy will be joining us at the tail end of the show for some TFR Betting Challenge picks. So
Nice.
no shortage of stuff to talk about. I do say, John, that it is very poetic or fitting that we ended last season with your co-host partner on Happy Hour, U.S. Rugby Happy Hour
Yeah.
Live with Bill Baker. Obviously hosted the MLR final pregame show with him, and we had some nice festivities out there. And now we get to open up the fantasy MLR season with the other half of that show here with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it's a nice little show. I mean, like that show is all Bill Baker. Credit to Bill. Like he puts the graphics together, he puts the music together. I just come in, ask stupid questions, and hope I don't look like a fool. But I gotta say, I'm impressed because we ask guests on, and typically they say yes, and yeah, it's usually a good time. So yeah.
And it's fitting, John, because we have been, I guess, all familiar with each other for some time. Can you believe it that this is our fifth season
That's great.
of Fantasy MLR that we're hopping into, where for the most part, you, Bill Baker of American Rugby Rising, James Deeley making the return this year, all content creators within this space that have had the luxury of all kind of partaking in this journey with us when it comes to playing Fantasy MLR.
It almost feels like the very first season again. It almost got back to that with the number of teams and maybe having the
hmm
hand score thing, but it sounds like all that got cleared up, thankfully. I know you put in so much work in year one just to get the results.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
I
we're
can
not back at that. So
Yeah, yeah, no, it's believe me, the amount of hours spent on Saturdays and Sundays, kind of just on an Excel sheet. Yeah, it is really, and it's kind of fitting. And well, I guess this is a perfect segue into our first segment. But there was talk about the garage days of a league, and kind of familiar to here on the Fantasy MLR kind of landscape in the Fantasy Ruckers Show. We know it, and we might still be in it, especially with how the league's going. But either way, fun stuff. But hey, John, great to have you here. Again, you can check Fitzy's stuff at Rugby Morning. Does a whole bunch of stuff with a whole bunch of content creators. We mentioned it, US Rugby Happy Hour Live with Bill Baker on American Rugby Rising. Makes appearances on Rugby Wrap Up with Matt McCarthy. All good stuff there.
and
So
Alistair Kirsch Poole on Glorious Rugby Podcast. Can't forget our
that is true
KP.
too. Yeah, you can't take the DC out of
That's right.
what do you call it? Out of the guy from DC, out of the Washingtonian, I guess. Is
The
that the way to
DMV,
put
District
it?
Maryland, Virginia. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There you go. You are out on the West Coast now, but hey, always a Old Glory DC fan at heart, of course. And yeah, we can't give AKP enough credit here in terms of the help and stuff he's done here to help get
Hmm.
Fantasy MLR off the ground. And with that being said, hey, if you're first time listening here, if you're a first time league member, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, all that good stuff here on the YouTube channel or wherever you're listening on the pod at the Fantasy Ruckers handles up above. Check out our Discord community, the link to join that down below. Great community over there that always begins to pop off this time of the year where people are going back and forth with everything from fantasy MLR to just reaction from a week to week basis when the matches come in. We'll be talking about a lot of those points here on this episode. And again, check out the fantasyruckers.com, the official platform for Fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. All right, John, let's get right into it. And we'll start off with the latest news from around the league.
News dump.
All right, time for our TFR episode 185 news dump. And there's a lot of different ways to go around this, but I think the biggest piece is that we got our first week under our belts here. Um, Kind of everything that we saw with the league in terms of the changes, all the announcements that we talked about in this segment when it comes to the broadcast, everything like that. Let's just, Fitzy, get your initial reaction. We'll get into the match itself, but in terms of the presentation, everything involved, what are your thoughts, kind of all the build up into this? And there's a lot of announcements that it feels like happened in the days leading up to that first match, which we'll get into here.
Mm.
But just overall thoughts on the opening weekend of Major League Rugby here in 2026.
It's so funny because it felt like even though the start of the league got pushed back, it felt like it came up on us so quickly.
Yeah.
But I will say from a presentation point of view, from seeing it on ESPN Plus, like I thought it looked good. I thought the camera angles were crisp. I thought the quality was crisp. We can talk about, the referee review system, but
Hmm.
I mean, I think the overarching storyline, it almost felt like a soft opening for a restaurant. Like
Yeah,
week one, have
true.
some people come in, make sure the back staff's got it, and the sous chef and all that stuff. But I mean, I think the overarching narrative, and I'm glad this has been put to bed now, is we can finally stop talking about whether or not Anthem Rugby Carolina is going to get their first win. And they
Hmm.
did it and I thought it was pretty compelling fashion. So overall, week one, week zero, whatever you want to call it, I thought it was a great intro to the rest of the league, and just I think goes to show like how competitive the league will be this year, knowing that Anthem got their first win and Legion they played sloppy, but there's hope there for them. I'm not too concerned with Legion right now at the moment.
Yeah, a sentiment that's shared here when I asked that same question to James in just a bit here. And again, we'll
Mm.
we'll break
Yep.
that down here in our quick tab recap coming up. But yeah, I think I agree with the sentiment. Just felt good to have Major League Rugby back. Obviously, with an off season that was, no shortage of turmoil. Obviously, a lot of change. I think Mags and everyone in that leadership role kind of going through and the team kind of powering through everything that they face, which I am sure, having spoken with a lot of them as well behind the scenes, it took a lot of work to get to this point. So I think everyone just needs to take a step back, right? Obviously, we can have our criticisms, and we'll talk about that this year because, again, it's all part of the constructive part of growing this league. But I think long story short here, just as an opening, I think it's just great that we have professional rugby still going
Yes.
here in the United States, and it was exciting to see. I guess big piece of that news, Fitzy, like you touched on, is Anthem Rugby Carolina getting that first win. Exciting to see. Obviously,
Mhm.
something we've been waiting to see for quite some time. And again, we'll break down the game itself and our thoughts on that. But I think That's the biggest piece of news. A franchise that has been searching and hunting for that first win has finally got that and put it to bed right away. That's not going to be a talking point here this season. They've done it, regardless of how you want to talk about how they got here, and that it took maybe taking advantage of a situation of acquiring some players who were searching for a new home. Either
Mhm.
way, they got it done here. I will say though, as that match was happening, and the piece of news that I want to touch on is that there were preseason matches happening elsewhere, and I think you're one of the I guess masters behind this, and maybe we've bestowed this on you as you've been a part of this fantasy Ruckers community about maybe reading between the lines, but we'll get into the fantasy stuff in just a bit. But as soon as you saw that California Legion lineup come out, when you saw Stephen Crimp and was it Pittman
Mhm.
in there, and maybe altering positions where Pittman was at the center position, Stephen Crimp was at the fullback, both having halfback
Yes.
eligibility here on the fantasy Ruckers, having most recently played at the fly half position for both, trying to capitalize on some points. The reason why I bring that up is because as there's preseason going on, Seattle Seawolves come out with their starting lineup to take on the Hartford Harpooners, and you see JP Smith
Mm.
at that number 11 spot. I don't know how much you want to read into this. I know Maddie kind of played this when we had good old Nate Oxberger, who
Yeah.
was then appearing on the wing and
Yep.
led him to a fantasy championship. But again, I think we got to take out this. We got to talk about these lineups happening elsewhere around the league that may not be MLR things, but hey, still something to look into as we finally get to say a first taste of these squads heading into week 2.
I think fantasy players should be prepared to be flexible with guys who are going to be maybe moving around. We have seen scrum halves, as you alluded to, a few of the names. Also, I think Michael Baska has played a little bit of wing before. He's
Mm-hmm.
primarily a nine, right? So, like, and if you look at Seattle here specifically, right? Why not see if you can try and get JP Smith and also Andre Werner on the field at the same time? If you're down a wing, or if there's like a U.S. domestic eligibility, type thing. So you got to get creative. And I jumped on. I wasn't exactly prepared to go Crimp Pittman there, but when I saw they put him in at halfback and fullback or whatever it was, I was like, you know what? Let's just take a leap of faith there. It was the last three picks of the draft. Crimp was kind of on my radar anyway. But I really do feel like there's going to be a number of guys that are going to have some position flexibility. And I love the fact that a guy maybe who has a center eligibility is then in the back three and I can get some meters gain points out of him. So, like, why not take a little risk there? And again, with every team, with six teams in this being so stacked that, have a little fun and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we're going to read into this deeply.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I can't imagine, obviously, I think when we've spoken with past Seattle Seawolves about the impact JP has had on that squad, especially with how long
Hmm.
he's been there, I wouldn't expect him to be starting at wing, especially with how deep that winger
Yeah.
room is for the Seattle Seawolves when it comes to that sense. But either way, the thought that that could be a possibility and that there may be a realm where there maybe is an off week where you do have a JP Smith and he's starting on the wing and still has halfback eligibility, at least as a fantasy manager, has got me licking my
Yeah.
chops. So we'll see, but just something interesting that I saw coming out from that lineup with the Hartford Harpooners there in the last preseason match for the Seattle Seawolves. Now, I guess speaking on that, I guess we'll throw this in this segment here about news. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially the league managers that have been drafting over the past week or so to get their leagues all ready to go for this upcoming first weekend of fantasy MLR. I guess we have some breaking news when it comes to our league and the OG league in terms of people wondering how it all played out. We're going to post the results out on social media if it's not already out there at the time of this podcast release. But hey, Fitzy, you had the number one overall pick. All right. The consensus has been back and forth. You're quite familiar
Hmm.
and you've listened to the show about the TFR curse. I think every single year, dating back to a old but familiar name in Bodine Waka, um, was the only person to have ever supplanted the TFR curse and live up to number one overall pick hype. You know, we can talk about Semi Kunatani last year. We can talk about Joe Mono the year before that. We can talk about
Hmm.
Ed Fido the year before
Yeah.
that and all
Yeah.
that. Like
Yep.
literally, and I do not wish this upon anyone, Fitzy, but it just feels like for some reason, every single year, whoever's the consensus number one
Yeah.
this happens to. You had the honor of possibly bestowing that curse on someone, but I think you're pretty confident that this is someone that could break it. Who was your number one pick?
Yeah, Devon Rousseau, but here's what I love him. I just think the way he plays, he's a consistent high performer there
Mhm.
in Seattle. Obviously, there's a lot of weapons there. You can move guys around. What concerns me a little bit, there's a slight little concern here with so is that Duncan Matthews also is one of
Yeah.
the top performing back three. And if you're Seattle, why not try and find a way to get both guys on the pitch? And if you
Yeah.
do, Duncan Matthews slots in at fullback and Rousseau goes to center. And then you kind of give up. There's a balance, right? And you maybe give up some meters gained, but you potentially get some more like carries because he's around the ball just a touch
Hmm.
more. Maybe he gets a few more tackles, but like
Yeah.
the I hate to say like the easy like 20 meters here and there on returning kicks, like that's such easy points for a fullback to get that I hate sacrificing that if
Yeah.
Seattle opts to put both guys on the field at the same time. But then again, Rousseau's such a stud. So long as he stays healthy, I think Seattle can put up a bunch of points. And my guy Rousseau has just got to stay healthy, continue to put up consistent numbers, and ride a steady, at a minimum floor of 12 to 13 points a game, and
Hmm.
I'll be content with that.
There you go.
And
Well,
Semi Kunitani's coming back, baby, in a big bad way, and I can't wait for that.
and there's the
And I
DC
can't, can't-
fan I was waiting for. There you go. And lo and behold, you draft him in the seventh round. I was waiting for when that pick was. I was going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. We could very well see a world where he shoots right back up to
We're
first
not.
round value.
No,
Why not? Right? Why
we're
not? No,
not. We're not.
I
We're
completely.
not.
Sure,
Nothing.
but we've seen it before though. I mean, you can't doubt the talent, that's for sure. And in a new space, we'll see. But no, I think the sentiment there with Devon, just a very safe floor play. So aside, I think that was the conversation. For me, it came down to, I think, the excitement and the ceiling that you could see with players like Joe Mono
Hmm.
here coming up, or just the safe play that you went with Devon Rousseau. And I think looking at our leagues, it was kind of a battle between those two. I think Joe Mono, I think at the end was just too enticing for a lot of people, and I think went first in a lot of different drafts. But I don't blame him, and
Yeah.
we'll see. And we'll get into it again here in the breakdown. But maybe those managers are maybe a little bit concerned here after 1 week of play. But again, long season, we'll see
Yes.
how that goes overall. But to your sentiment, Fitzy, I mean, in that lineup against the Hartford Harpooners, they found a way to put both of them in the lineup. Duncan Matthews at the fullback position,
Mhm.
Devon Rousseau at 13. But I guess the reassuring thing is that it's not going to be a question of whether or not if it's Duncan or Devon. I think it's a matter of having them both in the
Yeah.
lineup because you can't doubt the talent. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of where Devon plays, which again keeps that value, I think, pretty high. Overall, though, Fitzy, you talked about it. Your team, you drafted Semi Kunitani, you drafted Devon Rousseau, but just an overall arching standpoint, again, you'll be able to check out all these teams between Fitzy's Rugby Morning Squad, Bill Baker's American Rugby Rising Squad, Matt McCarthy's Rugby Wrap Up Squad, our squad here on the Fantasy Ruckers, James Deeley's MLR Stats, and our newest member here, former MLR champion Andrew Coe, also joining
That's
our
awesome.
league too. Which I do have to say, Fitzy, this might be your opportunity. I don't know if you remember, but way back you
Hmm.
said like if Coe was going to score a try in a game, you want him to do the gritty. Did he scored? Didn't end up doing the gritty, and I feel like that is a unpaid debt that you are still waiting upon here many years later.
Let me look at his roster here. Maybe he owes me a player and I can do a trade of some kind because I really wanted Kobe Milne, the fly half.
Yeah,
But maybe
yeah,
we'll see. Yeah, Damian
yeah. We'll
Boylan. We'll
see.
see. Yeah, yeah.
There you go. Well, hey, overall, what are your feelings on I guess the league as a whole, and do you think you stack up and a chance for you to get your name back on that highly coveted Fantasy Ruckers Championship jersey? For those of you who don't know, this is a jersey that started at the beginning. It's a nice Barbarians jersey that we have, and the names of all those who have won in our OG league has gone the honor of getting placed on that jersey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this. I'm looking at everyone's rosters, and so long our guys stay healthy, like this is going to be a cutthroat, competitive, top
Hmm.
to bottom. Am I high on my team? Yeah, of course. Everyone always feels like their team is it. I would give myself like a B to B plus.
Okay.
There's a couple of picks there. I'm head scratching a little bit. I was a little disappointed not to see Ronan Murphy. I think, he was listed as like the eight man for the Legion. Was kind of expecting to see him. He wasn't out
Yeah.
there yet. I'm excited for my guy Billy Meeks. I've deployed our guy Meeks after I watched that, inside MLR coffee
Yeah,
thing. I was
yeah, yeah.
flat whites and ready to go. But I think for this year, the biggest thing, and I was actually kind of surprised you guys took David Kutzer in the first round the way you did, because I kind of devalued the fly half position now because of the removal of kicking points.
Hmm.
Now, I love the fact that Davey can also play a little bit of fullback and he can get a ton of points there, which I think is maybe probably the play you guys took there. I'm a big David Kutzer fan. So I kind of devalued the fly half position a little bit. In fact, I don't think I picked a fly half until, my goodness, Crimp, right? Like
Yeah,
he
who I guess technically speaking doesn't even play fly half right
doesn't play,
now.
so and I punted on the second row position outside of
James Scott in the second last round is a steal for you, let alone Connor Mooneyham with that last pick.
that one fell into my lap, and that was just because our draft dragged on so long. Thank you for Andrew Coe being up in the boonies like Campton. Otherwise, I would have
Yeah,
picked someone
yeah.
else.
Well, because I mean, talk about having our first year of a slow. We typically have done a live draft in the past, but obviously everyone being in different time zones for the first time and in the time of doing this, we had to kind of resort to that. And
Yeah,
yeah, it really just timed up. I literally thought when I made that Jacob Norris pick and Andrew wasn't making his pick. I'm like, we're going to start this game on Saturday. Something's going to happen. And some of these guys are going to take big advantage. And of course, it's my arch nemesis, John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, who Connor Mooneyham with the brace, who, by the way, whose alleged dad, who's in our Discord community, called
he
him
did.
getting
Oh,
two
that was his
tries.
dad?
Apparently, that's what he said. That's what
Wow.
he said. Apparently, he called the brace before that started, and lo and behold, now again, we know this world. Maybe it's not. We got to get that. We got to get that verified on whether or
Yeah.
not that's the case. But according to him, that was yeah, the call of the year, I guess, in the opening match overall. Yeah. To touch on your Davy Coates point, if there was one fly half that I was going with that I was picking first of all, was him.
Yeah.
Just above, he's not just a pass distributor, right? This guy is an attacker. So we'll see how it goes and we'll see whether or not it pays off. But again, we Matthew has said it before, I've said it before. You set your team at the draft, you definitely don't win your league at the draft
Mhm.
time. And we got another whole bunch of weeks to go here going on. Speaking of fantasy MLR though, one thing that I know that our community wants us to touch on, Fitzy, and I'm not sure if you've dabbled at all in it, but there was the announcement that we can't go without this news
Mhm.
segment without talking about the announcement of fantasy MLR coming to Major League Rugby. And I'd like to argue that
Yeah.
we have been here for quite some time and have
Hmm.
seen the iterations of different fantasy platforms coming through.
Hmm.
But either way, love to see it. Again,
Yeah.
I've been a proponent on this show and I've said it. Hey, if you're going to take the work off my plate of having to put Excel sheets together and stuff, by all means, let me create just the content and talk about fantasy here. It makes my life easier. But again, just reassuring to get more people involved. Love to see it. I did dabble on it this past weekend. I will say, obviously, it would look bad if the Fantasy Ruckers didn't do good on it. Second on the platform and
Oh,
all of people. So what
let's
can I say? The
go.
lineup is pretty good. A little bit interesting there. It's kind of like your typical, almost. It's exactly like the weekly challenge,
Yeah.
basically that we've had. And it is essentially not our draft or North American style fantasy sports that we are trying to kind of inject into the rugby landscape. More of your
Hmm.
budget picking lineups type deal that you see in your overseas Six Nations lineups and things like that. But do you see the announcement? Your thoughts on it? Were you able to dabble at all?
I saw the announcement. I didn't dabble because I'm a pretty loyal guy, so I had to stay true
I
to my
love to
boys
hear
here
it.
at the Fantasy Ruckers. I'll poke at it and take a look at it, but I get the sense it's I mean it's daily fantasy, right? For
DFS, exactly.
I love the weekly challenge. I'm not going to knock it necessarily. You guys have started doing it. I'm going to remain loyal to that. Hopefully, the folks, that partnership that came together, maybe they kick the tires on what you guys have been doing here and solid. But I'm going to remain loyal to my guys that I started with. So if you're listening to this and you haven't done the weekly challenge, make sure you sign up because if you didn't get into a season league, you can do this weekly and it's still a lot of fun.
Either way, love to see
Just to
other
participate.
platforms out
Yeah.
there. Again, as much as we can grow this game through every platform, we'd love to see it.
Yes.
I'll be taking part in Scrummy. I'll be taking part in Weekly Challenge. I'll be taking part in
Okay.
obviously our season long leagues. And again, always been a proponent. Like, I mean, I am not a web developer. AKP, we've talked about him before, is the website guru and helps us put this all together. We don't get paid for this. We do this all in the love of the game. So again, we it's our dream. We just kind of stoking the fire. We're the kindling. We just want to see it kind of spark up, and whoever can take the reins for us to just talk about it and create a platform that all of us can use that is up to date and modern, like how fantasy football is, because that's obviously the staple, the poster child of all of it. We'd love to see that. All right.
Speaking of, hold on.
Yeah.
Speaking of fantasy football, let the listeners know that I won the fantasy
Oh, of course you
football
were gonna bring that up.
competition this past.
That one was a rough one. I was gonna see how long I could get away without mentioning that. Either way, I got to give you your flowers. Hey, fantasy football is the bread and butter of fantasy sports, and hey, you trumped it all there in our Fantasy Ruckers fantasy football league, which has been a blast to kind of bridge that gap between guys who love fantasy and obviously love rugby as well. So kudos to you, Fitzy. Um, I guess yeah, we give you the flowers and the bragging rights for at least 1 year
Where's
before we.
Maddie? Maddie needs to be here. Where's
I
Maddie?
know. Yeah, well, I'll have to get him out here, and we'll have to we'll have a follow up here on to come episode. So we'll see. All right. With that being said, though, no time to waste. We have a match to break down. Let's get right into our first quick tap recap of the year.
Quick Tap Recap.
All right, quick tap recap. Week 1 in the books. Anthem Rugby Carolina, California Legion. I think opening thoughts for me here, Fitzy, on this one is, first of all, we talked about it in the news. Crazy exciting to see Anthem get their first win.
Mhm.
It would have been even crazier to see it happen on home soil. That being said, I saw the videos of the Carolina bars that had the watch parties going on, which was exciting to see.
Mhm.
But is it a result that shocks me? No. Is it a result that and the way that they did it and how they dominated, was it a little bit surprising? I guess in a way, because I think I was a little bit more optimistic or had a lot more confidence in California Legion than what I saw on Saturday. We'll get into the nitty gritty, but I guess Fitzy, your overall thoughts on the match this weekend.
Yeah, I think I had picked Legion to win the match, and on a couple things. One, travel across. I thought maybe the Legion would be a little bit sharper. Core of that team was from the Giltinis. I figured that would kind of you
Hmm.
know stay together there a little bit. I had a feeling Anthem was going to be a competitive squad, and that it was going to be close. I picked the Legion to win by 6, but obviously that did not happen. But it was interesting if you watch that game, right? Carolina got the first 3 points, and then the Legion scored a try, and they were up. I think it was 5-3 or something like that. And I was like, okay, I think the Legion's going to start to kind of put it together here.
Yeah.
But they just couldn't get it together. There was just, so many turnovers, drop passes, missed connections, a little bit of sloppy play. All that stuff can be fixed and tightened up. Obviously, both sides were missing a couple of players. Seth Smith from Anthem, and then also obviously Billy Meeks being the biggest one in Legion. He's in Australia. So I think the Legion will get it together. And I'm sure you covered this with James Deeley, but the amount of possession that the Legion had and the
Yeah.
amount of territory that they were in Anthem zone, if you're a Legion fan walking away from that, you're like, there's still some good that has come out of this, and that all hope isn't lost just because they lost to a team that hadn't won in 32 or whatever that number is,
Right.
right? So I
Right. And
think
that
they'll pull it together, but they've got a big test against
yeah,
this week we're going to
yeah.
talk
And we'll
about.
and we'll get our predictions
Yeah.
in with the preview of this weekend. But couldn't say it better myself though there, Fitzy. I think again, we know the style with Stephen Hoyles being the head coach there with the Legion and what they're going to play, right? It's a high risk,
Yeah.
high reward type of style, right? We've had Andrew Coe, who's played under Hoyles last year with RFCLA on this show about how
I
fun
said
it
the
is to.
Giltinis, RFCLA.
Yeah, all right, there you go. Hey, LA something, right? Either way, the how fun it is to play in a system like that because it's
Yep.
fast paced, right? It relies on, converting and scoring and all these things. But within that, you're gonna have games like this, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna have games where it's just not on, especially when it's a team that is formulated by guys that are obviously familiar with each other. A lot of RFCLA guys on this squad, but a lot of names within that too that are brand new to this system. So I think I don't want to take and make this sound like I'm taking anything away from the anthem. I do think that the score line does reflect more so the opportunities that were missed by California at many times. I think at one
Mhm.
point, Alex Corpiacero said it on the broadcast. He said, like there was a point I think in the second half where the Legion left like 15 points on the board, and had they converted on those chances, we can talk about the held up scrum right
Yeah.
that happened or the knock on the outside. It's a one score game at that point, and who
Oh,
knows what
first
direction that
half. I
happens.
thought Crimp had a wide open break and the
Yeah.
pass hit his hands and he just knocked it on. I think he just maybe had the fullback to beat. He either beats him or, he gets the try assist for the wing on the right there. But like there were a number of just missed connections. It was just like the more they play together, the more I think they'll be fine. Apologies for the background noise. My kids are still
No, no, it's all good. Hey, it's the duties of being a
Mhm.
father while being a rugby pundit, I guess,
Sure.
John. So it's all good. But either way, I again though, at that same time with those missed opportunities, the team that is playing them still has to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about Anthem because that's exactly what they did, right? So you have one side in the California Legion that are going to play a high-paced, high risk, high reward type style. You flip over to California, who seem to be a little bit more methodical. Not the perfect game, still mistakes, messy here and there, maybe a little bit undisciplined at times. They had the double yellow at one point, which allowed the Legion to kind of stick within the game. But they capitalized on it, and they
Mhm.
they they took advantage of some of the drop passes, the penalties, scoring on those opportunities. Talk about Connor Mooneyham, who I think took advantage of his athleticism. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even call that necessarily systematic play from California. It was just great, great athletic play from Connor that took advantage. But overall, though, I am impressed with how Anthem looked and how they were able to play a pretty formidable style of rugby that I think will get them far this season and
Mhm.
will be able to take advantage of bad rugby when it happens. I am a New England Patriots fan, and the good old Mike Vrabel said that, hey, we got to start off by building a franchise by taking advantage of bad football, right? Same thing here, right?
Yeah.
Anthem still looking for that first win heading into this one. They got to learn how to take advantage of bad play. They were able to do that here against the California Legion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people commented on this, but it seemed like you could see the influence of the new head coach, Augustin Cavalier, Kuka, I think as they call
Yeah.
him. Strong set piece. Guys are going to play with a lot of energy. They're going to come up fast on defense. I like the fact that they mixed it up a little bit. I don't mind Makeen Ali Khan mixing it up. Like that is his game. Like he
Yeah.
is really good at that. And maybe potentially we could be seeing a Joe Mano suspension. I don't know. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was something. MLR, disciplinary office might take a look at that, and we'll see. But strong effort from Anthem. They finally got that win out of the way, and now the conversation can change from are they going to get a win to, hey, if they put together another, I think they play Chicago coming up, like if they
Hmm.
get a result out of that, like, oh, Carolina's for real, and now they're a contender, and that
Yeah.
changes the vibe of that team and the bigger picture here too, if you want to think about it. Like, what does it look like for 27 and then beyond 31? But one thing at a time. It was just one game,
Yes.
but
Yes.
still, like, you got the dub. Fantastic. 9 more games to play now.
Yeah. What I think is the biggest part of that is that they get the monkey off their back right
Yeah,
away. We are not talking about this anymore. They
yeah,
got the win, we move forward, and now they can just play rugby, right? Like
yeah,
I think
100%.
that even the sentiment last year is like, when is this going to happen? When are they going to get their first win? Where like the ending the
They
season,
might
like,
have
oh,
got
we're
robbed
still,
against Houston last year at the end. Just
yeah.
saying.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, exactly. So, either way, so kudos to Anthem again.
Yes.
Big moment for that franchise, obviously, with what they set out to do and the whole philosophy behind that program. Obviously, big for U.S. rugby as a whole as well, with a lot of marquee guys on that team, doing what they do. But yeah, no, exciting to see. I want to touch on the fantasy points here now, but before we get that, you mentioned the Joe Mano. disciplinary action, and you talked about the yellow card that he got. We can speculate about what made to come, but what we is not speculation, I should say, is the way we got there. And it was the first time that we got a glimpse of the
Hmm.
referee review system, and furthermore, the challenge system. Um, I just want to put my 2 cents out there before I get
You
your
go.
reaction,
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
because I've said this before in this show. The one thing I've always admired about rugby, right, and the way that it's
Hmm.
officiated, is that the priority of it all has always been getting the call right, right? All the games of how we get to that right call, the challenges, anything like that, that you don't see that, right? When you watch Super Rugby, you watch Six Nations, you watch any of these top tier competitions across the world, right? Like, they have it down packed, and they have it in a system that works, at least in my opinion. When the referee review system came out, honestly, pretty all for it. Like, I'm down to put the power in the officials' hands, allow them to make the call on the field, and allow them to, have the resources necessary to make the right call. Where then I took a pause was then when I got to the part in that media release where there was going to be this challenge system,
Yeah, yeah.
which to me, in my opinion, was almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? You're telling me that you want to speed up the game, and the way at least that I saw it operate in the match this past weekend, it felt like it slowed it down a little bit. And it felt like you're handing over the power from the referee's hands into the power of a player making a judgment call on whether or not a play should be reviewed.
Mm.
Again, I get it. It mixes in the North American style,
Yeah.
right? Because all the professional sports in North America has this challenge system, and it is very apropos that it's happening. I don't know how much baseball you're watching
Oh
there,
yeah,
Fitzy,
I
but
was about to
like
bring that
the
up.
ABS system, which, by the way, let me tell you, is amazing to watch. They have
Yes.
it down packed. The
Yes.
speed, I've heard that in the stands, it's amazing. Just like, okay, the ump goes up, says it's a challenge call. It's a 5 second thing that goes through. They get the call right, they move on. Like, just like the process is great.
That's the key right there. Yeah.
And that's where I think this part it still took the time of the referees going to the monitor, looking at over, having the discussion, and then coming back and making the call. People argue that we would see this anyways if we still had TMO,
Hmm.
but then we just swapped one thing for another. And again, the
Hmm.
part of it that I have a hard time with is that now you're leaving it up to the players to make judgment calls on the field while they're playing the game, which I get exists in other sports, hasn't existed in rugby before, at least to my knowledge. And now that has been implemented. A little bit iffy on it. We'll see how it continues to play on. I agree with the referee review system and the process there. The challenge, I guess the best way to put it in a nutshell, it just felt a little bit odd to me in the rugby landscape.
I think I'm there with you on the criticism of it. How about this? How about a tweak to this? Hear me out on this. Um, the referee review system, there's a shot clock, if you will. It counts down from 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes to review everything and make a decision. You don't have to
Mm,
use all full 2 minutes, but there's only 2 minutes max for the ref to take a look at it. It limits the like how many angles do we need to see? Quick,
yeah.
clear decision like a ref needs to make, an official needs to make, a match official needs to make. Maybe they
Hmm.
get it right, maybe they get it wrong, maybe it's a certain gray area, but as soon as it goes to the referee review system, there's 2 minutes, it counts down, and a decision needs to be made within 2 minutes. So we can just move on and play.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
that would supplement the keeping it moving forward. I agree.
Exactly. Just keep us
And I
moving.
don't want to make it sound, I don't want to make it sound like they took forever, right? Like,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
dealing with this last year, and like last season, I think I would take this over hearing the off-field official constantly in the ear saying we need to go back and look at this, and then not taking a whole bunch of time
But you
for it.
know
But
what? Like teams are always trying to find an edge and they're going to game the system, right? Like
yes, yeah,
could you see teams saying, "Hey, we got two challenges here. A team is really rolling right now. I don't know if there's a clear challenge, but let's let's slow this down for
yeah,
let's slow momentum. Have the
right.
ref take a look at some infraction.
And I don't know
To lose
what
one,
has
fine.
been. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what was outlined to the teams in terms of the parameters in which what can be challenged, the timing of which can be, because
There's
the
some
me
parameters around it.
the
Yeah.
media release was to be honest, vague in that sense, where as
Yeah.
fans, we don't know what that protocol is, right? How far can you go back to challenge? Um, it said that only the captain can challenge. I'd
Yeah.
like there's a lot of nuances to it, but that's a great point though, Fitzy. Like, will teams take advantage of this moving forward this season in ways that we did not expect? It'll be interesting to see how it develops. Either way, our first taste
Yeah.
of the challenge system that to me maybe felt a little bit out of place. Maybe it's because
Yeah.
it's something brand new and I'll get used to it more and more, and there'll be interesting storylines. I'm a guy about content. I love
Oh,
if
yeah.
things can create content. This definitely does that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how
Well,
it
Ryan,
all.
final point on this, and this is just tongue in cheek here. I mean, you always you watch an NFL broadcast, right? When they go to the booth or something, or they go to look at the review, they always have like the rules official come in and explain what
Mhm.
the refs are looking at. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to have a video with Nigel Owens in the bathtub, literally explaining what we're looking at.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
let's
mean,
just go
hey,
first order with this.
well, no, and we've been talking about teaching people the game, right? That'd be a great way to do it, right? Like if people don't understand what's going on, yeah, let's break down Joe Mano's punch and see why this is why this is
But
illegal.
it's
And
literally Nigel
it,
Owens in the bathtub
yeah.
explaining what we're.
Yeah. No, that's great. Hey, the MLR is stepping up their
Or
social media
Margot
game. That would
Robbie if
be
they find some more money.
they would definitely go that way. But hey, either way, interesting to see. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see how it plays out. All right. From a fantasy sense, though, Fitzy, let's talk about our some of our marquee players here. And it was very interesting to see how it all played out. I think a lot of guys showed up that maybe
Hmm.
people didn't expect to have fantasy outings like they did. I think a lot of people were disappointed in maybe some of the fantasy outings were. We'll start on the good side here. Connor Mooneyham, can't doubt what he did. Obviously, in the 67 minutes he played, racks up 19 fantasy points,
Yeah.
54 meters gained. But I think the highlight of it all was the two tries that he scored. One being a great athletic kicking play that he got there, and it, it I was just so stoked to see him get that moment because
Yes.
it's a guy that was drafted first overall, was on the Dallas Jackals. Obviously, it happened with what they happened. And then he goes to the Seattle Seawolves, obviously deals with injury over there, never really gets his footing there. Comes to the Anthem here last season, comes into this place and has this type of game. It was really cool to see, especially with everything else going on. For those of you who didn't know, like
Hmm.
just got married, right? And all this good stuff. Yeah, it was cool to see.
Good to see him fit and healthy, given he has, the background and some of the injury and, the fact that, I think he's got a real good shot at making an Eagles team here again. But I think the big one, you're like, obviously you can't expect Connor Mooneyham to score two tries every time he comes out here. But the biggest thing
Yeah.
that stands out to me is like when you select an Anthem guy, they're going to be playing a lot of defense and they're going to be making a lot of tackles. I mean,
Yeah.
Connor Mooneyham, 12 tackles at the wing position. That's insane.
Hmm.
Eric
Yep.
Storty, 17 tackles. Like, look at all of these Anthem guys and the number of tackles they've had to
Yeah.
make. They made so many more tackles than the Legion.
And
So, those
interesting
are
enough,
points.
though, we do have a very interesting nugget coming up with James about maybe that being a product of maybe teams who play the California Legion. Because if a team's going to play that fast and
Yeah.
have possession that much, you're going to be having to make hits. And obviously, Anthem is the first example of that. But yeah, you mentioned Storty though, 13.7 fantasy points in addition to the 17 tackles, scores the try, obviously plays the full 80, got the 26
Mhm.
meters gained. Other double digit performances. Johan Mumsen, obviously the captain there, 11.2 fantasy points, 22 tackles for him, which was impressive. And then 10.2 for Julian Roberts, who I got to say, Julian Roberts, who always had flashes with the Nola
Yeah.
Gold, looked really solid here with the Anthem
Yeah.
Rugby Carolina squad.
The biggest thing to me, and I'm sure you're about to get to this in a second here, but Luke Hardy, 2.1 fantasy points. How many fantasy points would he have had had kicking points been added to
Yeah.
this?
Well, let's see here. I can pull that right up for you because I
See,
have
that's
that.
because that's the
Uh,
biggest.
got three conversions, so that would have
Well,
been
he did get a yellow, so
he did have a yellow as well. So three conversions, that's what,
and a
2 points
penalty.
each, 2.1 point each. Yeah, so an additional 3 or 4 points, I guess there.
But
So
that
it's the
makes
yellow
that
card that
adds
hurt
up.
him
Yeah.
the most. Yeah, but it is a big impact though without the kicking for sure. But we'll see how that goes. So again, back three player of the week here. Connor Mooneyham, Eric Storty, our center of the week on Carolina, and then got to give a shout out to Campbell Robb making his debut
Oh
with
yeah.
6.9 fantasy points for him. Scores the try off of the maul of the line out. It looked pretty solid. Again, I think for me as a fantasy manager, in our OG league. I drafted Seth Smith,
Sure.
immediate round after Ramir Gurvich as the backup, and lo and behold, this describes fantasy MLR in a
Yep.
nutshell. Is okay, yeah, of course it's going to be the third guy that I didn't pick that's going to be making the start here in week one.
Well, I think it just goes to show. I think Anthem set piece was pretty strong. The maul tries were awesome to see. I think that's
Yeah,
a reflection of the Kuka led team. But yeah, I mean, like, shoot, if you've got an Anthem, I know it's only one game, but if you got an Anthem hooker on the waiver wire, pick them up. You
yeah,
know, if you've got if you've got a bench spot or take a flyer, because you'll probably get a little, the maul try right there. That's
yeah,
45
yeah.
points.
Over to the California Legion side, I think the biggest talking point, at least for me, who stood out the most, Ryan James was
Yep.
great.
Yeah, he was fast.
19.5 fantasy points there, 125 meters
Yep.
gain. It looked like the athletic Ryan James that we've always seen in terms
Hmm.
of the ability to break the line, make big gains. I think he's going to be a fantastic fantasy asset. Surprisingly, on a lot of drafts, kind of slept on.
Big time.
Like,
He went late in our,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think maybe the concern there with, Joe Mono being there, Rory Van Voot being there,
yeah,
where's Ryan? I mean, he's just athletic and he's going to make those plays. The
he,
guy though that stood out to me the most, Ben Houston.
yeah.
14.7 fantasy points, 65 meters gained, 9 tackles and a try. It just felt like though that number doesn't suffice in terms of how involved he gets at the breakdown and where he moves around the pitch. Great, obviously, on the defensive side of things, but he just felt like a menace when it came to everywhere he could get involved on that offensive line. And again, that is a product of being in the Stephen Hoyles offense.
Mhm.
And again, the way that they're going to play and get their dynamic back row players into space. But Ben Houston, if he's going to keep this up, he's on track to be one of the marquee back row players here this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw it last year where he pretty much just snatched the 8 jersey away from Semi Kunatani from
Yeah,
RFC LA. When Ben Houston was on the field, he was just wreaking havoc there.
yeah,
What it concerns me as someone who invested a little bit in Ronan Murphy. Ronan Murphy, a big strong player from Houston who, I thought was going to, again, it's only one game. I thought he was going to be seeing some more minutes or maybe just a different opportunity there wearing the 8 jersey. But if Ben Houston's going to continue to play like that, then I'm a little bit worried about, the minutes that Murphy's going to get
yeah.
at the 8 jersey. But again, only
I mean, just
one.
just the deep back row room that
Mhm.
California has, which is one of I think the impressive parts. The last guy I want to touch on here is Gonzalo Bertranu,
Yeah.
Fitzy, halfback of the week here.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, is there any more that can be said? It just electric.
How are MLR teams like not anytime there's a penalty against them, how are they not immediately turning around and ready? Because when you're playing Legion, Gonzalo's gonna tap and go, and
I know.
he's gonna piss you off, he's gonna irritate you, and I love that about the scrum half because you want that from your scrum half, but like it's happening. Everyone's like, oh, here
Yeah.
goes Gonzalo, he's gonna tap and go.
It's impressive. And I mean, from a fantasy sense, just the perfect. I think the reason why I had him so high in my halfback standings is that reason alone. Because
Yeah.
without the kicking, the amount that he looks to attack,
Yes.
and I think he's the biggest benefactor from it. Like I would
Yeah, yeah.
not be surprised if he ends up being our number two, number three halfback on the year because of all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
As a former nine myself, and I know Matthew would speak to this as well, on top of all the quick play that you love to see, again, with how California wants to play, how quickly he is able to move from breakdown to breakdown and get the ball out. I mean, we'll touch on it more here with James, but like over 100 passes, compared to Zion Going's 50 passes, with that in itself just reflects how quickly they play. It's impressive to see him move around the pitch. And as a former nine myself, there's no way in hell that I was moving as fast as that, getting around the park. So,
And that's why I'm not too concerned with the Legion. They'll have Billy Meeks back. They'll move some guys around a bit more with the way
yeah.
they play. They get fit. They get more connection. Like they'll be fun to watch, and they'll get wins. I'm not concerned about Legion after one game.
All right. Well, yeah, Gonzalo Bertrand, 12.9 fantasy points again with the two try assists there as well. You can expect that. And again, then lastly, Jason Dom, 8.8 fantasy points as our second row player of the week here from
Solid
a
points
fantasy
there.
sense.
Yeah.
Any last notes here, Fitzy, to cap off our recap of the weekend?
No, it was just an exciting week 1, and I'm glad we got a full slate heading into week 2.
All right. Well, hey, before we get into week two, now's the time. We're going to bring on the stats guru himself to break down some of the numbers that stood out to him in the first week of MLR play, North American Rugby databases. MLR stats is James Deeley joins us here to help break us down what he saw from MLR week one. And like I said, hey, it is time to bring on the numbers guru, the guy that has all of the MLR stats, apparently, and that is James Deeley of the North American Rugby Database. James, had to bring you on before we jump into what is a jam-packed week two with a full slate of matches, but wanted to get your thoughts on this upcoming week. But before we get into that, James, you're back in the fantasy circles. We'd love to have you back.
Yes.
We're going to get into your team that you drafted over this past week, but more importantly, man, had you on the show not too long ago, have you back here. MLR has started. How you feeling, man?
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of feels like buses, wait for ages and then all of a sudden two come at once. I'm back again. Feels like only, a couple of days ago I was here last time, but that's not a bad thing. I love being here. I've been good. I'm excited to finally get this season underway.
Yeah, I think that's the sentiment for everyone. I mean, talking with Fitzy, obviously, on this show, talking with you and in just a bit with Vandy. I mean, it feels like we've been like just itching for this season to start, especially with everything that's gone on this offseason, to actually have a match that's tangible to watch and have that kickoff this past weekend. I got to say, it was a whole lot of fun to be able to get onto wherever you're watching MLR. For me, obviously ESPN Plus, and seeing that bug on there and seeing, all right, kickoff time. Let's tune it on, just sit back and relax. It was a good time to see. Obviously, we'll break down on what we thought about the match and from your side, from a number standpoint, what you thought about it. But yeah, it's exciting. First off, though, the pressing question. Again, you're back in the league. You're one of our OG members, right? Way back in the day.
I am, yeah.
It was a tough call, I know, from your point, at least from our part, when you had to say, hey, I got way too many numbers in front of me right now. Gonna have to take a step back for a little bit from the fantasy circles. But when I got the text from you this year, James, that, nah, you know what? I'm back in it. I couldn't have been more excited. It was almost as exciting as Christmas morning to see that. So the draft is in the books. I texted you the amount of times, because the Fantasy Ruckers squad between myself, Vandy, and Maddie were drafting in the 5th spot. You were in the 6th spot.
Yeah.
Had that back-to-back picks, which I'm sure you can tell me whether or not you liked it or didn't like it. But the amount of picks that you stole from us coming around that way, where we're like, all right,
good. That's good,
right? You feeling good about that? We were like, damn, like the one that killed us was the Ollie DeVoto pick, because we were like holding on, waiting for a center, and in that 4th round comes around, we see the Ed Timpson pick come up, and then there's Ollie DeVoto that flashes across our disc. We're like, oh, that could have been the center that we chose. But overall, man, you've gone through the process. We had a 13-round draft that took over the week. How are you feeling that you're back in kind of the fantasy circles? I know fantasy and numbers, we've always said, has gone hand in hand. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, it's like I said, I've had a year out, but I'm feeling okay. I've feel like I've picked up a few gems quite late. I'm feeling very good about that Will Sherman pick in the 12th round right now after that game. But I don't know. I still don't know if I like having the back-to-back picks, because you get to choose twice, but then it's so long until you get to choose again.
Yeah.
You just have to wait every single message coming in being like, have they stolen my guy? Have they stolen my guy? Like, you got Seth Smith, the pick before I was going to pick him, and I was that wrecked me.
Well, believe me, I was not feeling, and Vandy and Maddie can attest to this, we were not feeling so good when the Anthem Rugby Carolina pick or the roster came out, when they announced that. Obviously, you're pretty good at reposting that and stuff. And we're like, he's not in the lineup. And it was almost like Maddie had to like walk me off the ledge. He's like, man, we've been doing this for 5 years. This happens all the time. Like, this is week one. We don't know what's going to happen. Seth Smith's American eligible, obviously a growing prospect, and that he's going to play. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I feel good again. Then when you texted me that and said, that Seth Smith pick too was one that you saw, I was like, all right, you know what? We're feeling right back dandy.
Got to be being said, Campbell Robb looks pretty good as well. He was in place of Seth Smith. He had a game.
Exactly. Yeah, no kidding. So from fantasy manager standpoint, not the best situation to be in when you have three adequate, because I mean, Ramiro Gurvic also making obviously an
Yeah, yeah.
appearance in that match
I
as
think they
well.
both scored as well, didn't they?
Yeah, that exactly. The one thing you could be like, okay, yeah, like you know what, Seth Smith needs
Yeah.
to be in there if there's gonna be no. They obviously knocked the lights out with that. But yeah,
Hmm.
either way, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of having that back end pick, especially this year, because as our listeners and viewers know, we had to go with a slow draft this year just with timing and everything. So
Yeah.
usually we have a live stream and the picks usually come around pretty quickly, and we can make those picks as they come. But yeah, especially with a slow draft when there's hours between
Yeah.
picks
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
sitting there and you're like, what the heck is going on? Either way, glad to have you back here in the fantasy circles, and we're pumped to kind of have this going, and we will have all the draft results from all the members, MLR stats, James Deeley obviously in our league, but rugby wrap
Absolutely.
up with Matt McCarthy, Bill Baker, American Rugby Rising, John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, and this year for the first time having a former MLR player in our league as well, and Andrew Coe. It's going to be a fun season, and we'll have the results, and you guys can let us know in the comments, let us know on socials who you think won, and if whether or not you think James maybe did decently well with his back-to-back picks. We'll let the people
I
decide.
hope so. It seems like we've got a higher proportion of Canadians than the league do right now.
That is true, and that may or may not stem from maybe some of our
Yeah.
Canadian ties here with me and Maddie. But either way, having a good mix. I think almost even, right? 3-3, I guess.
I think
What
so,
do you
yeah.
call us? Like a half? Because I mean,
I guess I'm
Maddie and
like a
I are.
half as well, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Either way, the reason though that I wanted to bring you on, James, on top of obviously chopping it up and talking about that excitement of having you back in fantasy, is you're the
Mhm.
numbers guy, right? People go follow James at NA Rugby DB. MLR stats, you search that on Instagram as well. Just some great content out there when it comes to numbers when it is involved in Major League Rugby. And I think the biggest thing, we got one match in the books,
Mhm.
and we're heading into obviously our first full slate of games. Anything that stick out to you from a number standpoint that maybe perk the ears of fantasy managers, but just any fan as a whole that kind of stood out to you here after 1 week of play?
Well, it kind of it makes a lot of sense, but it was my expectation that the California Legion were going to just play a running, gunning kind of game of rugby after uh, RFCLA played that kind of style after
Hmm.
under Stephen Hoyle's last season. It's pretty much the Legion is pretty much just like the Legion branding with RFCLA infrastructure
It's
and
true.
play personnel. It makes sense to me that they're just running it from everywhere. So your California Legion, geez, that's going to take some adjusting. Your California Legion players are going to rack up the meters. I think
Yeah.
it's pretty clear. I mean, they had as a team did just shy of 750 meters made compared to Anthem's 342, so over double the meters made that Anthem did.
Hmm.
And I mean, as a result, to switch that around, Anthem's defense was incredible. They made 215 tackles compared to the Legion's 100, and that includes. I mean, look at the top 10 tacklers. 9 of them are from Anthem,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
with the exception being Christian Poidovan, who's always going to be up there for the Legion. So it was just attack versus defense, and it just turned out that Anthem's defense was better than the Legion's attack, who looked really really rusty. To be honest, it was between Anthem forcing turnovers and I think probably just Legion coughing it up so many
Yeah.
times, trying to force that extra play, which is I guess what Stephen Halls wants them to play. But it was very very different play styles that just it was kind of an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's a high risk, high reward type style. And I think that's
it is.
the perfect kind of sentiment bringing up James. And I think that is going to really in tune with fantasy managers, because I think that's what's unique about this fantasy sport when it comes to fantasy MLR, in which the way
Mhm.
that we play it here on the Fantasy Ruckers with the week to week drafting and the matchups and kind of spotting out players from a week to week basis that you think are going to do well. And one of the things to touch on what you mentioned there is that you can count on, if you're going to have guys that are going to be tackle machines
Yeah.
in a game against California Legion with the high paced play that they're going to play, you can expect with even more confidence that those guys are going to be pretty dependent for you. So when you're making a lineup decision, right, and you have,
Mhm.
let's say, a Christian Poidovan versus, let's say, a
Corey
let's
Daniels.
a Corey Daniel, right? You know that Corey Daniel makes tackles, right? And you're trying
Yeah.
to decide, okay, who has the upside here when you know that, let's take, for example, on the Anthem, a guy like, Will Sherman, right? Who maybe
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
tackling as much against other teams against the California Legion is going to probably have those numbers bolstered a little bit because he's playing a team that plays with that type of pace. The number that sticks out to me the most, though, James, is when I was going through the numbers here was the thing that reflects just the pace of play that California is going to play with this season is the number of passes of their scrum halves in this one, right? You look at Gonzalo Bertrano, 104 completed pass,
And that's
right?
that's
And
compared to Anthem's entire pass total was 109.
yeah,
Like that's
and
insane.
right, and when it's apples to apples, right? Zion getting off 51, and I know that Gonzalo played the full 80, and
Mhm.
Zion was, I think, around the 60-minute mark there. Still, to double that number of passes at that
Yeah.
ninth position, I think that in itself just reflects, all right, we know what California is doing, and I think that's going to play into a lot of decisions that fantasy managers are going to make this season in terms of how they're going to play guys that are on the California Legion, and then vice versa, how you're going to play guys that are facing the Legion as well this season.
That's just while on the subject of Petrano, he made 71 meters as well as passing over 100 times. Like
Yeah,
the man is insane, but I
yeah.
mean, he's on my fantasy team, so
Well,
I'm happy
exactly.
about that.
That was the next thing I was gonna mention was like you must feel pretty good, right? Like we announced on socials at the Fantasy Ruckers, right? Our team of the week in terms of top fantasy performers, and
Yeah.
obviously Gonzalo Bertrand who makes it with the halfback position.
Mhm.
That's what has been interesting with having this early week 1 match where we only had one match. And as people know, we're starting fantasy MLR officially with the full slate of games here in week 2. For us, all in intents and purposes, this week 1 was essentially considered week 0 for us.
Yeah.
It gave a chance for the either confirmation bias for league managers to be like, I drafted that guy. That guy's great. He's going
Yep.
to be the best player this season. Or the hit the panic button where you're like, you drafted Joe Mono first overall. He gets a yellow card and he doesn't score a try this season. And you're like, oh damn, let's hit the panic button here. Obviously, it's all going to balance out. I'm telling everyone to make sure to take a deep breath. This is the roller coaster ride that you decided to ride on here when you said you'd want to play fantasy MLR. But that's just the way it is. And yeah, Gonzalo Bertrand was one of the guys there, along with
Mhm.
a handful of others that we talked about, Fitzy and I, between Ben Houston, obviously Connor Mooneyham doing what he did over the
Yeah.
weekend as well. All these numbers back it up, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. I was thinking, oh, Connor Mooneyham's going to make the meters. He's going to lead the meters. That's easy. But I forgot that a lot of it was he kicked the ball away and then regathered it, so that
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
actually count. So
Mhm.
it's actually Ryan James is leading the meters by quite a long way with 125, and he had a fantastic game as well for the
Yeah,
Legion.
yeah.
Really, really looking really good on the wing. In fact, just to compare it to the other wing and Joe Mano, he got a yellow card and was kind of quiet, so which is very
Yeah,
unlike Joe Mano. So
it's true.
maybe it's
It's
just
true.
a rust. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, it's the first week. There was only
Yeah.
one match played, so it was on full display for everyone to watch. If you were staying in tune and you had plans of following the MLR this season, obviously you were tuning into this match and no one was missing it. Everything is going to get nitpicked, and it's week 1. I fully expect that things are going to change. We'll right now, at least the dialogue or the narrative that's going where Anthem's way up here and California Legion is
Yeah.
way down there probably won't persist for the next 9 weeks. But hey, who knows? But again, I think the hype is there for Anthem Rugby Caroline. Kudos to them again for racking up that first win. But I guess that's the final question for me, James, for you in terms of the reflection of these two teams into this week. You looked at the numbers, you broke it all
Mhm.
down. Is there a cause for concern, I guess, from the California Legion side of things, from the numbers that you're seeing? And then I guess you flip that on its head. Can Anthem Rugby Carolina fans be excited for the trajectory that they're on for a franchise that obviously has been searching for that first win over the past 2 years? Now have got that
Yeah.
in week 1, and now feel like the world is their oyster and they can see a world where, hey, maybe they're actually really competitive in this league and not only maybe fighting for a playoff spot, but maybe down the road playing for some championship glory here.
So yeah, I'll start on Anthem. I do think that they, based on that performance, and it's only one game, they should be competing for a playoff spot. I do think that they've got the monkey off their back really early in the season, as early as they could have done, and now kind of like I think I put my fact file up for Anthem, and the goal for this season was to get the first win. Well, they've done that. They've done that as early as they possibly could. So like, I think they are going to keep going. I think they're tackle machines. I think it's a completely different Anthem team than we're used to seeing in the last 2 years. Kuka Cavalieri is an absolute wizard. He did the same with Dallas. He's doing the same with Anthem. I just think Anthem fans should be very, very excited. On the other hand, I don't think it's massive cause for concern for the California Legion. They're rusty. It's one game. Although they do have a lot of RFCLA players, they also have a lot of Utah, a lot of San Diego Legion. That this was their first game playing together. Now, it's a shorter season than we're used to in MLR, so I don't think they have as much runway to kind of get up to speed as they perhaps would have liked and perhaps needed. But I think they are going to gel. We saw in the last kind of 10, 12 minutes of this game that the Legion was starting to click. They got 2 tries in the last, 10, 12 minutes, like I said. They were starting to click, and those errors were starting to disappear. They just ran out of time. So I don't think it's massive cause for concern. If it continues into week 2 or 3, I might have a different answer. I think they're up against the defending champions next weekend, but that's a very, very different looking New England side. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it with Vandy coming up here in just a bit in our TFR betting challenge, but what a team to need to rebound here and try to get back in the win column, then taking on the defending champs here, albeit at home. But either way, New England is obviously a tough out. Mind you, a brand new looking New England side, which should be interesting to see. Either way, we'll finish off on this note, James. I don't leave anyone or allow anyone to leave our podcast without making their predictions here for this upcoming week. I know it's Monday. I know it's early, but we're putting you on the spot here and making the picks. I made Vandy make his picks. Maddie's making his picks. Fitzy is going to make his picks in just a sec here. So let me run down the list. We'll do some quick hitters here. Don't need to give me too deep of an explanation. Just go with your gut. We'll open up with the Friday matchup. Seattle at home against Old Glory DC.
Seattle.
All right. That's pretty easy. Confident. There you go. All right. Then the second matchup here, you just mentioned about them. Obviously, a lot of hope and a lot of optimism with Anthem Rugby Carolina, but they do take on what many consider the favorites heading into the season. You have been on record on this podcast talking about how much you love this team. The Chicago Hounds come into town, and it's going to be this young, hype team and Anthem Rugby Carolina looking to tack on another win against a Chicago team that is well experienced and have the names on that roster to get it done this year.
Yeah, it was a very easy choice before last weekend's game. I still think the Hounds will have it, but again, like with California Legion, they haven't played together. They could be rusty as well. Whereas Anthem, they've already got the season underway. They've already got a win. It's going to be close, but I think it will be the Hounds.
All right, Hounds and Seawolves here to lock up the first 2 matches. Last match, though, to round it out, we just talked about it, the California Legion get the pleasure of trying to bounce back against the back-to-back defending champions here of the New England Free Jacks, a different-looking New England Free Jacks team, like I mentioned. James, you're going to go chalk here? I think a lot of people are on that same sentiment here to allude to what Vandy probably chose here in the upcoming challenge.
I think I am leaning towards the Legion because New England have so many unknowns that I just don't know what they're playing at. They've got the fewest returning players in only 10 of their championship team from last year are back. The Legion, at least we've had a glimpse at them and they're starting to click. They've had a game together. I'm leaning towards the Legion again in Torero, which I'm hoping the San Diego Legion fans will turn up. It's hard to say. I think the Legion, but that's because I just do not know with this New England time.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what the MLR is all about here when we start the season. I feel like it's the same sentiment every year where we're just like, is this the team that we think they are? And then they end up being a completely different team. But that's just the beast we've decided to cover here in Major League Rugby heading into another exciting season. Either way, like I mentioned, for all of our listeners and viewers out there, make sure you go check out narugbydb.com, your go-to site, honestly, a great resource resource for everything that you need to know when it comes to the tiniest of details of Major League Rugby. Any number that you can find, you could probably find it on that site. We obviously use it a whole bunch when it comes to our preparation. And again, a great partner of ours because stats and fantasy go hand in hand. And James, we talked about it. We're going to try to make you a regular guest here on this show here to give any inside nuggets because I think that's a great thing. Hey, if fantasy managers out there are listening, if there's one thing you can take away, hey, tackle numbers are going to be huge for teams taking on California Legion. At least that's what my fantasy ears are hearing from you, James.
Sounds like it. I mean, I'd love to. I'll be here whenever I can, but I am a bit cautious that I'm going to be giving tips to my opposition because I'm doing this thing. So maybe I might plant some misinformation. I don't know.
And that's the worst feeling, right? Like that was when Maddie and I were going through our top fives. We're like, are we going to be giving away who we think are going to be the sleepers here and everything?
Yeah.
And then the worst feeling is when like we're in our listener league and we're in the later rounds of our draft and Maddie's like, oh, like I'm going to take Max Lehman on the New England Free Jacks as kind of my sleeper pick in the later rounds. And one of our listeners picks him right before him. And he's like, obviously he listens to the podcast and there you go. We're giving away our thing.
I
So
don't
it's
think he was picked in ours. I was considering picking Max Lehman as well. So
well, he's available on the
with
waiver
May.
wire, and that'll be running here this week. But either way, James, appreciate you. Again, go check him out at narugbydb.com as we head into another week of MLR, and more importantly, at least on our end, fantasy MLR. Appreciate you, James.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Well, thank you to James for hopping on here. Always great to see you. And Fitzy, also good to have him back in the fantasy MLR circles.
I
You
was
got to take a
nervous when
week
he came
off, obviously.
back. Sorry, I was
Busy
nervous
guy,
when he came
right?
back because he's got the edge on the stats, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
he's sharing these stats with us, but what is he not sharing
Well,
with
and that's what he
us?
mentioned, right? He was like, "Oh, like I got to be careful because I'm like, we're going to be bringing on James, I think, more frequently on this show." And he's like, "I'm going to have to kind of be strategic with the
Exactly.
numbers that I bring out." I don't blame him. It gets competitive here in our OG league, so we'll see how it goes. I think the biggest thing again, it's extrapolating the numbers and seeing how that applies from a fantasy sense. And when he was bringing up about how fast California plays and maybe you're looking at teams right when you have tackle machines, guys like Christian Poitevin, guys like Corey Daniel, Joe Johnston, when they go up against a team like the California Legion, right? Not in Poitevin sense because obviously he's on the Legion, but other guys like they're going to rack up tackle numbers just with how much they handle the ball. So something to look on when you're making those lineup decisions. All right. With that being said, Fitzy, let's get right into it. We're done week 1 in the books. Time to go through our rucking rundown of a full slate of matches here in MLR's week 2.
Rucking Rundown.
All right, our rucking rundown of week 2. I know it is, I guess at the time of the release of this podcast, only Tuesday, but hey, not ever too far to look ahead. 3 matches this week. We got the Seattle Seawolves taking on the Old Glory DC, your Old Glory DC boys on Friday. Then we on Saturday have Anthem Rugby Carolina hosting Chicago, and then wrapping up the weekend on Saturday evening, a bout between the California Legion and New England Free Jacks, which should be an exciting one. We'll start with Friday's match though, Fitzy. Going to be interesting. Seattle has always been a mainstay of this. Old Glory DC has some exciting new names. You obviously know, breaking all that down with the Glorious Rugby podcast and such. What are you looking in this matchup? And is there something that's going to shock us? I have a feeling I know what your pick is. I've already got a consensus of what a lot of people are saying in terms of their picks. I think a lot of people are picking Seattle in this one. And is there a world where DC is going to be able to shock us here and take down a team that I think a lot of people are excited to see this 2026 year?
Yeah, I think my pick is it may surprise you, but I think I'm going to give the edge to Seattle for a couple of things. One, they're playing at home. Starfire is not an easy place to play. Old Glory DC traveling across the country to play there. This is
True.
probably a Seawolves side that is going to be a little bit sharper, right? With not one but 2 preseason fixtures that they've already played. I mean, they were down in South Africa for a week or 2
True.
and then played kind of a mixed Stormer side and seemed to fare pretty well there. And they had a number of their top guys in the lineup and then followed up by taking on a local men's club, the Harpooners there. So will they be a little more sharper because they have played 160 minutes together? It's possible, right? So for all those reasons, and some of the additions they may have, from a pure fantasy standpoint, I mean, like, come on, David Kutzer, that's our guy there.
Yeah.
Andrew Werner, as we've talked about, who played with him in Houston. Obviously, Matthews and Rousseau and Dan Creel, and now Mark Bennett, the Scottish center, just
Mm-hmm.
in the backs. All of that stuff, I think, is really fascinating. You pair that up with Michael Hand, who I think Rufus McLean, like those are all quality backs that are big and have some pedigree there, right? Footy, of course. So I'm going to give the edge to Seattle. Is there a world where Old Glory DC can win this match and keep it close? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's week one, right, of a
Yeah.
10-week season where anything can happen, right? And I think
Yeah.
all the clubs that are playing understand that this is really a sprint, not a marathon here, right? So like you got to get table points in every match, right? So whether it's the try bonus or keeping it within 6 or 7, whatever that is, I think that's important. I think what's playing in Old Glory DC's favor here a little bit is people maybe are overlooking them a little bit, and that happens every single year. Everyone's like, "Oh, Old Glory DC never makes like these big splashy moves." Like we saw Chicago; it seemed like week after week, we're
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
announcing stud after stud. And Old Glory DC, I think the word that I used with them last year, and again, two straight, they've made the playoffs the last 3 years, the last 2 seasons, they're right at the 500, 8 wins, 8 losses, or whatever that was. I think they're finally piecing together. A lot of that is the continuity, a lot of the core that they have brought back. I get it. People will be like, well, yeah, John, their best player, arguably, Jack Ascaro, is not coming back. Love the fact that he's playing in top 14. That is fantastic for him, fantastic for MLR, fantastic for the men's Eagles,
Mm-hmm.
right? Callie Martinez, I think, is going to step in. Canadian international. He can play both
Mm-hmm.
sides, left or loose head prop or tight head prop. He'll slot in. Is he a one-for-one replacement for Jack? No, but he's darn near close, and he's a quality player. And they brought in a couple other guys too. Paul Mullen, men's Eagle capped, some depth there. I love that. Kirby Myhill, they brought him back. So they beefed up that front row a little bit. All very important pieces. They've got a steady engine room. They brought in Rick Rose, who I'm really
Mm-hmm.
high on. They obviously have Rob Harley and Devin Ngali guys that fantasy players should be aware of. The one of another big surprise is obviously the loss of scrum half Connor Buckley, who announced
Mm-hmm.
the week before training camps that he was going to take a corporate gig here. So Old Glory DC had to scramble there a little bit, and they had to bring in Jay Renton, who probably saw primarily reserve minutes there for Houston. But okay, but look, that back row for Old Glory. Let's
Yeah.
start with Corey Daniel. Like obviously we know what he's done over the last few years leading the MLR seemingly every year in tackles, capped Eagle. But look who else they brought in. Aiden King, who's a phenomenal rookie,
Mm-hmm.
up for Rookie of the Year. Semi Kunitani, if he can come back and play like 70% of what he did not last year, but 2 years ago when he
Yeah.
seemingly
Yeah.
took MLR by storm, that's fantastic. Ben Benasso, like right there, loving all that. Fly half position, Jason Robertson back. He looks healthy. You throw Max Schumacher in the mix, who can play a little bit of fullback too. Centers, Jordan Jackson Hope comes in. You gotta love that. Back three, Damian Hoyland's gonna hold it down. Perry Humphreys, a fantasy guy. Harley Wheeler coming in. Like, so obviously I went through that entire lineup there. But what I'm trying to say about Old Glory DC is that I think fans may overlook them and they may say, oh, they're going to Seattle, it's Starfire, they're gonna have a tough time. And I'm going to say they're not going to win this first match, but I think they keep it close. And I think they really are going to sneak up and surprise people and start to really gain strength. And I really do think this is an OGDC side that is going to be a serious contender. And I could be wrong, very well may be wrong. A lot of prognosticators, a lot of people on Reddit are counting Old Glory DC out, saying they're going to finish 5 or 6, they're not going to be the top 4, they're not going to make the playoffs. Wait and see. Wait and see with this
Yeah.
Old Glory DC squad.
I mean, hey, you nailed it on the head. I mean, if there's any season where it's any given or I guess the saying is any given Sunday, but I guess in this case, any given Friday, Saturday, whatever have you, it is this year with how equally balanced it feels like some of these teams are. And hey, when you have 66% of the league, yeah, I can do math as a fantasy guy, making the playoffs, you just got to make it, and then anything
Mhm.
can happen,
I
right?
think that's
Two, I'll leave it quick on here before we leave the next matchup. The things that I'm looking out for. Jordan Jackson Hope, I am super stoked to see.
Yes.
I feel like, and you as a DC fan can tell me, but I feel like DC has been waiting for that dynamic center that can just make plays. And Jordan Jackson Hope feels like he can be the guy that can do that. And I understand you had Nick Grigg before, but what Jordan Jackson Hope, I know he had last year
Mhm.
off due to
Injury.
injury.
Yep.
Year before that, though, what he was doing with Nola, it just felt like he had that explosive ability to make plays and be a difference maker. And I'm so excited to see what he can do. Again, you nailed it, John. Like, it's not a lot, but I think it is significant what Jackson Hope can do. You add that on top of, again, you mentioned it, Semi Kunatani and all that. Super excited to do that. I am interested on both sides to kind of segue into the Seattle side of things for a fantasy sense for me, the hooker position, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be the key for both teams. Who is going to be starting at hooker? Connor Robinson,
Hmm.
love him, right? He was very effective on there. Kirby Myhill obviously been great with that as well. On the Seattle side of things, we've seen Devald Kotza all the way back in the Dallas Jackals days where he scored 4 tries in that one match. Electric. But we also have Sean McNulty,
Yep.
obviously longtime MLR guy there, and Leaky Chantung as well there, who may have the best name in all of professional sports when it
Mhm.
comes to that. We'll see that. And then the last thing is, what is Davy Kutzer able to do? I think it's going to be so exciting to see him in a Seattle Seawolves jersey and see that electric play. So
I mean, just
should be a
think
standout.
the
Should be a
number
standout.
of battles that Houston has had against Seattle with Davey
Yeah,
Houston. It's
yeah.
just fun to watch him play. Now that
Hmm.
he's in Seattle, Seattle Seawolves fans have got to be loving what they have in store.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting to see that finally get on the pitch. So Seattle there for you. I'm going Seattle as well, Fitzy. Maddie also
I
going
think DC gets
Seattle
2 table
in this
points.
one.
I think they keep it close and they get the try bonus and they get 2 points
Okay.
out of it.
There you go. All right, moving to the second game. First one on Saturday, Anthem Rugby Carolina. Looking if they can double down here. 2 weeks in a row, but they got a tough test.
Yeah.
The Chicago Hounds, which many people consider as the favorites heading into this year
On
with the
paper.
pieces they've been able to add, in addition to the pieces that they've been able to keep. Marquee headline, obviously, opening up the offseason craziness with the signing of Tavit Lopetti. But then you
Mhm.
have obviously the return of Chris Hilsenbeck at the fly half position. You supplement that with an overseas guy with Theo Furry, who should be fantastic for them. You add Santiago Videla, Brock Webster, Jason Tidwell, these guys that can make a difference, along with Peyton Wall with what he was able to do towards the
Mhm.
tail end of last season. Like, I mean, the list goes on and on. And they are deservingly so one of the favorites heading into this year. But they do take an Anthem Rugby Carolina side that, again, we talked about to an extent here in earlier in this show. That took us, I think, all of us by at least somewhat of a surprise of how they were able to win this past weekend. Chicago, is it going to be a get in, get out, easy business taken care of weekend, or is this something that will be? And I guess it's going to be hard to tell, having not seen Chicago, just seeing the names on paper. It's another thing to get the result there on the field.
Yeah, I think last week this picking this game was easier, and for me it would have been like Chicago, pretty handily, even though we saw the names that Anthem was putting together. Today though, it's a different story.
It
Today I
is.
think it's almost closer to 50-50, only because we've seen what Anthem did, and we obviously it was not Legion's best game, but still the elements that the Anthem was able to show makes this a tougher pick in my opinion, just because again, we have seen teams in the past make big splashy signing big names. Remember Nola Gold a couple of years ago, like
Hmm.
all the
Yeah, yeah.
French dudes or whatever that they brought in. It was like
Yep.
Nola is going to steamroll people, and they didn't. They fell flat. Right? I think they won like 3 or 4 games that year. Well, obviously there were some issues in the background. I'm not equating the Nola Gold Chicago Hounds here. I think Chicago Hounds is a very competitive side. On this one, I feel like it's kind of a toss-up, but I think I got to give the edge to Chicago because maybe a little bit more of the veteran mix. I mean, a couple other guys you didn't, you skimmed over them because there were so many guys, but
Yeah.
the amount of quality centers that Chicago has with Mark O'Keefe and Tavito Lopetti and Tion Lutz, every time that guy runs, he runs so angry and he gets points. You pair him with Ali Devoto, like that right there is going to be wild. I think we will see Peyton Wall take his game to the next level as he eyes making, the men's Eagles. I think this one's close. I think Anthem will keep it close. Anthem may end up winning this game. Like even if I do think Anthem has a shot at winning this, but I guess I'm going to give it to Chicago until Chicago proves me otherwise that they are not like the team to beat. So edge Chicago, but there'll be a lot of fantasy points in this one.
Yeah, who has a better chance of winning, DC or Anthem?
Oh, baby, DC, let's go. Come on.
There you go. There you go. I had a feeling I walked into that one. For me, this is what I'm saying. Like, I get the points of we've seen the big names before. The difference that I think this is going to be not as close as what maybe people may be feeling with the recency bias of how well Anthem played is the way that Chicago plays. When you look at this roster, yes, did they add a lot of names? They did, but the core in which how Chicago plays, a lot of the returning players are there. You talk about Mac Jones, Lucas Rumble,
Hmm.
Mason Flesh, right? These are guys that have been there, done. Charlie Abel. Yes, they add Theo Furry, and that engine room in the second row is obviously brand new, but it's going to be a lot harder for Anthem Rugby Carolina to take advantage of a team that doesn't really make as many mistakes or are prone to making mistakes as California Legion was. So I think I'll agree with you there. Chicago is going to be my pick on this one as well. Maddie picked Chicago as well. So far we're pretty chalk. I'd imagine when the sports lines come out, which we'll talk to Vandy in just a bit about, we'll have both those teams as favorites heading into this one. But yeah, to your point, Fitzy, I do think there is going to be a decent amount of fantasy points to be had in this one. Biggest question for me is what that starting back three will look like for Chicago. Are we going to see a Santiago Videla? Brock Webster, I think a lot of people have pinned as the starting fullback there coming off of the MVP
Hmm.
performance with the New England Free Jacks. It should be interesting. And we saw what the Anthem is capable of doing. So we know that there's going to be fantasy points there having that as well. All right, last matchup here, Fitzy, to round out the show. We got the New England Free Jacks heading over to the California Legion and talk about a tough matchup to bounce back from in a tough loss against Anthem for the California Legion. You're staying at home. You're welcoming in the back-to-back MLR champions.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, this is a team that looks completely different. A lot of new faces. James mentioned it. He's siding with the California Legion in this one because of all the new names and maybe having a little bit of need to grow with that. We'll see. It's hard. It's while I say it out loud, it is hard to bet against this team that
Yeah.
has just been so consistent. But mind you, you're familiar with it with Old Glory DC and the battles that they've had with New England the Free Jacks. We've seen New England start slow, and this could very well be a opportunity for that to happen and for California Legion to capitalize on it.
Yeah, this one is interesting. You obviously know my history being an Old Glory DC fan. Here's what's going in New England's favor here, and I know like Tom Kindly, the GM, he's left. He's Super Rugby gig right for the Hurricanes.
Hmm.
But when you talk with folks for the New England, and Bill Baker and I chatted with their new GM Todd Thornley just a couple of days ago. That's coming out soon. The way they talk about how they run things, the culture that they have, and how Ryan Martin has stepped in and done such a good job. Like there's that pedigree. There's a reason why that team continues to have success year over year
Hmm.
over year. And even though there's been a ton of changes, I mean, they've had to swap out a lot of guys. They still have brought in some core pieces. This is a tough one for me, but seriously, because I will we see a bounce back performance from Legion? Yeah, I don't think they want to start 0-2, like kind of digging themselves in an early hole. And what a storyline it would be if week one Anthem wins. They won their first match, and then the three-time defending champs lose their season opener, and then
Yeah.
everything is just kind of tossed into the mix again. I
Yeah.
think like for the parody of it, for the storyline of like how great would it be, like, okay, we've got six teams in this, and all six teams have a shot at making the playoffs. It's not like everyone else, and though, yeah, Anthem over here, like if Anthem can put together another good solid performance here and Legion are able to bounce back, I think that bodes well for just the competitiveness of the rest of the season. So for that standpoint, for that storyline, I'm gonna go with Legion. I'm gonna back James on this too. And this could just be, the OGDC, the bias in me. And I'm okay with that. So I'm okay with that. I'm gonna go Legion squeak out a competitive win, but not that New England looks bad. It's just that Legion tightened things up a little bit. less turnovers. They look a little bit more sharper. I don't know if Billy Meeks is going to play, which makes me a little nervous because he's an Australian. I drafted him in like the fourth
Yeah,
round.
there
I
you
got to go
go.
check his Instagram, but hopefully he took a flat white and he's on a flight over here soon.
The big question for me when it comes to this New England Free Jacks team is just how is this new identity? I shouldn't say new identity because they're going to come with the same New England Free
Yes.
Jacks identity that Ryan Martin has instilled and everything. But
Hmm.
how do these new faces assimilate to that? I mean, like you see on this screen that I have on our doc with all the players and stuff. Like it's a lot of new guys, but exciting though. And I know Maddie has had a handful of these guys on his to watch list, guys like Jacob Norris,
Hmm.
um, Keenan Higgins, Max Lehman as guys that, hey, these guys can be
Yeah.
impactful players on the pitch, but also impactful fantasy players. So, will it take some time to gel? Maybe we'll find out this week. Again, with all of that going on, we're forgetting about Joel Hodgson is now the guy there that is distributing. And we've seen what this guy's been able
Yes.
to do for many, many, many years, right? Obviously with the Utah Warriors, now with the New England Free Jacks. Um, it's going to be interesting to see. And
Yeah. Joel
this is
Hodgson's
this
like
is me.
the perfect guy for New England Free Jacks fans to get behind and root because he's got such that like that
Yeah.
that lunchbox pail
Hmm.
mentality, put the hard hat on, not flashy, but just gets the job done. Cool operator, just gets wins and then goes about his business. That's like if that isn't the New England way, I don't know what is, but that's
Yeah, yeah, we'll
scary
see.
he's there.
This is all part of me stalling and trying to figure out because I thought I knew the answer heading into this one, but knowing Maddie's pick and knowing Vandy's pick on what they had, they both go New England in this
Mhm.
one. Um, I got to make ground because I was the lone person that picked California last week, and obviously they both picked Anthem. So you know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna listen to Fitzy, James both convinced me. I'm going Legion in this one
Okay.
as well. Um, I just think that I think we swung so far the other way of doubting this California team. I think the pieces are there. They have a match under the belt. We've seen New England start slow before. Screw it. Why don't we see California? And if there's going to be a high-powered offense that's able to take down New England, it'll be pieces like that. But
Does it change if Mono is suspended? If.
does it change if Mono is suspended? Let me pull up.
Because that probably means what Oscar
Oscar
Tracy,
Tracy comes
who
in.
everyone apparently is super high on.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I saw Will Hooley talking very highly
Yeah.
of that.
Does that change
No,
it?
I'll stand by my pick. I'll stand by my pick.
Okay.
We'll keep with that. I might be I this is the start of a vendetta against California Legion because if they fail me on back-to-back weeks of picks, they might be my bogey team here going in. But either way, I'll side with you and James and I'll go Legion here. Maddie picking the New England side, and we'll hear again Vandy's pick here and his explanation for New England here coming up in just a bit for the TFR betting challenge. But either way, good stuff there. But with that being said, hey, let's get right into it. Let's talk about those lines with Vandy here as he comes on for the TFR betting challenge.
TFR Betting Challenge.
It is time for our episode 185 TFR Betting Challenge. Week 1 in the books, like I said, heading into week 2. The first week of fantasy MLR, but the second week of us putting some money on the line. Of course, with that, we'll bring on Devin, Vandy, Vanderpool, and Vandy. Hey, not too bad of a week. We were on here last episode talking about some of the picks. You went out there and said, hey, if there's anything double-digit spread, you're going all in on the Anthem, and it seemed to pay off there, bud. And both of us going that route, picking that opening line of I believe 12 and a half.
Yeah.
There in favor of the California Legion there. And for me, it was an easy, let's smash that all day and make some money. For you, man, same thing. It must felt pretty good. It's not often that you and I hop on this segment here and are feeling pretty good about the picks the previous week.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know what's weirder, that we both won or that I'm gonna sit here and say I should have took the money line for Anthem.
Right, I know, and then we'll get into that. But it was funny when I posted in our group chat, Vandy. I was like, "Okay, here's my pick for the week. Here's my bet, and here's my bet slit. You go ahead and
I
double
double it.
that. Exactly. You put in the double the price, and you're like, all right, here's my pick. And I'm like, of
Yeah.
course, that's how you're going to begin.
You know what? If you're gonna win big, you gotta lose big.
Exactly. Well, hey, so last week you're right on the money there. If Anthem were going to be underdogs there by more than a double-digit spread, that was something that you were going to smash all day long. Comes out again with that 12.5 point spread there. It dropped to 11.5, so the money was there. People knew that that's the way that they were going to,
Oh
at least
yeah.
on DraftKings there. So hey, we'll see whether or not we can score that same lock heading into week two. But Vandy, I mean, overall thoughts, I guess the sentiment here is that a lot of people, including the books, were doubting what Anthem could do. And as Fitzy and I talked about before, hey, Anthem came out with a mission and they made a statement and racking up their first win in franchise victory, not only covering that obviously 12.5 spread, but doing it in dominant fashion and coming away with that win.
Yeah, one day I'll be able to watch the highlights of this game to see Anthem get their first win, but we won't get into that. Yeah, from what I'm reading, it sounds like a hell of a win. So
I mean, how long have we been on this show touting and waiting for Anthem's first win? And here we are in MLR 2026. Did it
May
take for
opening.
half the league to fold? Maybe, but either way, a win's a win, and Anthem have that under their belts here and look pretty good while doing it.
Yeah, they did.
So either way, again, I guess the bigger storyline here is that Vandy and I both cashed in here. He is currently winning because he decided to
Double it up.
up me a little bit there on doubling down on the amount that he was able to go in on. But either way, I pay the respects where it's due.
Hey, you
Again,
know what? Think about it the other way. If Anthem would have lost, then you would have been the winner by default.
fair enough. And we'll see whether or not that trend continues here this week. We do have a harder week here, Vandy, here on this TFR betting challenge. We got 3 matches here, a full slate of matches after the, I guess, teaser and what I've been saying as a weekend that kind of just got the taste buds going for not only fantasy MLR managers, but MLR fans as a whole. And we got a weekend that starts on Friday with the match late in at 10:30 with both the Seattle Seawolves and Old Glory DC playing, and then 2 matches on Saturday between Anthem Rugby Carolina and Chicago, and then California and New England. So let's first start off here. I think the way that we're going to do this, it seems like the lines you and I were just talking about, that the lines come out either a day before or the morning of, and we'll see whether or not that improves throughout the year. But at least on a match week, the day of or the day before, the lines come out for you to make your picks. Obviously, we're here recording this on a Monday, podcast being released on a Tuesday. Got some time before those lines are released. So let's go into your picks first. Fitzy gave me his picks. Maddie gave me his picks as well. So let's get into your picks, Vandy. So we'll start off on the Friday, Seattle versus Old Glory DC. Who do you have there outright?
You know what? It's tough. I mean, with that Anthem game, I feel like this season's it's thrown for a loop. So you know what? I just have to go off of the feeling of last year. So I'll start this one off and go Seattle.
All right, there we go. Hey, I think a lot of people are going to be joining you there. Now, the question, this is the TFR Betting Challenge segment, so you get a follow-up question here, Vandy. In terms of the spread, and you're going here with Seattle's outright, what would the line have to come out as? The spread have to be for you to choose Old Glory DC in this one as something that you'd feel comfortable that they would cover?
I think I would do it. I think it's gonna be 5.5. I don't know if I'd love that, but I'd go 6.5.
Okay, so anything, a try and under, essentially, you're
Yeah,
siding with Old Glory DC. I think
yeah.
I like where you're standing there. Again, Seattle is a highly touted franchise. Have been there, done that. Obviously, success. And being at home on top of that, with the team that has a whole bunch of new players that we've touched on here this episode so far, and Old Glory DC obviously coming into enemy territory. So hey, 6.5 is pretty good. We'll see whether that comes out. And again, you nailed it on the money there last week, so we'll see whether or not that stays the same here this week. All right, on to Saturday. Outright pick here, Vandy. Anthem Rugby Carolina at home hosting the Chicago Hounds.
This is kind of tough. I mean, especially because the way Anthem looked last week, but I don't know. I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go with the Hounds. Yeah, I'm feeling good about the Hounds, even though they're away. I think they're gonna come in. I think it was a nice win for Anthem, but I think they're gonna go 1-1 here.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an interesting match to follow up on what was the opening match of the weekend, because obviously confidence is sky high when it comes to this
Oh
Anthem team.
yeah.
But Chicago is a team that we've been talking about all off season long
Yeah.
about being the favorites heading into this year. Hard to go against them. So then the follow-up question again, just like the one before, for you to side with Anthem, what would the spread have to be?
I think double digits again. I think even though they won, I think you can kind of read the writing on the wall here. I think I'm gonna go with I think 11 and a half, 12 and a half, something like that. I think I would do. I think if it was 10 and a half, I wouldn't love it. I don't think I'd touch it there. I'd want yeah, I'd want probably 11 and a half, 12 and a half.
All right. Well,
I
hey,
think they might be able to.
yeah, and I mean to that sentiment, it's one thing for that line to come out against a California Legion side that by all means heading into last week, let's not get the recency bias too here, clouding
Yeah.
over what we're talking about here. A lot of skill obviously on that California Legion team, but again, a brand new squad. This Chicago
Mhm.
Hounds team, a lot of returning players, obviously some new faces, but again, this is a squad that has been there, done that, and know how to do that. So
Yeah.
despite being on away territory, I think I agree with you. Chicago's definitely going to be the favorites. I think the question is how much that's going to be and whether or not that'll be double digits, like you say. All right, last matchup to round out the weekend. We were just talking about. Feels weird to only be having to break down 3 matches, but hey, this is how we stand here in 2026 in the landscape that we're dealing with. I guess gives us Vandy less picks to get wrong here and
Yeah,
not
that's
make
right.
money, which is a good thing. But to round it out, to follow up on Saturday at 7 o'clock Eastern time, California looks to bounce back against the New England Free Jacks. Your pick in this one.
I think just to keep with the theme of going out with the teams last year, I mean, I don't know how you can ever doubt the Free Jacks. They are just they feel like a team that just has a chip on their shoulder. They play with a pedigree almost. So I don't know. I think the Legion was hoping for a better team for a bounce back. I don't think there are many available with only 6 of them. Well, I guess 5 others, but I don't think they were looking for the Free Jacks after losing to the Anthem.
There you go. Well, hey, then the question follow up, just like the previous two before, the spread for you to even think about putting any money in the confidence of that California Legion side against the defending MLR champions.
I mean, I think they're going to clean it up a bit, but still, it's hard when you're playing with money to not take recency bias. You only got one stat to go off this year, and it's not a good one for them. So I'm going to say I'll go. I'll go 8.5. So I'll go 8.5. 7.5, I wouldn't love.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, more than a try above. Interesting enough. Should be interesting. Again, we had the luxury this weekend, Vandy, of only having one match and basically all of our eggs being in one basket. I'm excited to get that text from you. When I shoot you a text about my betting slip this week, it'll be interesting to see what you come back with. And I'm sure you're a man of parlays. I know you did that a lot last season, so we'll see whether or not you have the same cojones here this year
Oh,
to
yeah.
be going that through. I mean, you're what, 2 for 2 here in terms of beating me on the TFR betting challenge. We'll see whether or not you can make it 3 for 3, just like I guess the New England Free Jacks in the run that you're having.
Hey, you know what? Money's not real, man. Just throw it on the app. It says
All
whatever
right.
you got in there, just toss her on it. Who cares?
There you
Money
go. All
ain't
right.
real.
Final picks locked in. Vandy's going Seattle, Chicago, California. He's saying over a try to even think about siding with Old Glory DC, double digits for Anthem Rugby Carolina, and then at least a try or more to side with the California Legion in this one. Should be interesting. I'm excited to see Vandy's bets. And again, you can check that out on socials and see what Vandy and myself are laying that money down in our TFR betting challenge on social media. Vandy, always good to have you, bud. And I know Maddie misses you out west. I know Fitzy sends his regards on this episode, but always good to have you here on the TFR betting challenge, formerly known as Devin's Degenerate Dambles.
Hey, you know what? Glad to be here.
Hey, quick note though, you feeling good heading into the first week of fantasy?
Oh, you know what? Can't wait. Glad it's back. Glad it's back. MLR shout out. Please give me a way to watch this. At least YouTube highlights, please. But yeah, no, excited. Can't wait to kick some butt. I talked a lot of smack, so I got title to defend here.
It is true. First pick that you going with, went with your boy Joe Mono. A
Had
little bit
to.
lackluster here in that first week. We'll see whether or not he can put on a
He'll
show
pick
here
it
coming
up.
up this week against the New England Free Jacks. All right, Vandy, wait, always good to have you, man. Then we'll see you next week on another episode of TFR Betting Challenge.
Peace and love.
Always good to see Vandy. It's a perfect spot for him. TFR Betting Challenge. The Devin's degenerate gambles. Loves laying the money on the line. May need to find other avenues to try to watch these games as my fellow Canadian is trying to look for how he can continue to dabble here in the MLR. But either way, that doesn't stop him from laying the money down on the line. You heard his picks. You heard his lines. We'll see how those match up when the lines do come out later this week. But either way, Fitzy, it's coming to an end, man. It's the past hour or so of breaking down all this. I might have to talk with Maddie to see whether or not we make this more of a long-term thing, because it was nice
why is
having
he
you
running
around
scared?
here.
Every time I come back on the show, he can never be found. He can never be found.
I know. It's maybe you guys are the same guy. I never see you guys in the same room. What the heck? Fitzy and Maddie are all in one. Either way, great to have you, man. Again, you can check out Fitzy and all the good stuff he does at Rugby Morning. All while he's got the dad duties going on, doing everything he can to help grow this game. On with Bill Baker with U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live, Rugby Wrap Up with Matt McCarthy making appearances there. It's all good stuff. But Fitzy, always good to have you, man, and appreciate you taking the time to co-host with me and taking over Maddie's slacking duties heading into week 2 of the Major League Rugby season.
No, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. It's excited. It's gonna be a fun season in fantasy.
There we go. And you're not taking down the 3-headed monster this year. We'll see. We'll see. All right. For Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, and for this week, for John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.